Welcome to the SDR DiscoCall vidcast and podcast, a show designed for brand new sales reps working in the world of tech sales. I'm your host, Neil Buyan, and I'm going to be taking you on a journey on the SDR DiscoCall vidcast and podcast. Did you know that you can watch this show live with the guests on YouTube? This show is available on YouTube at happyselling.io. Hi there, listeners, it's Neil here, and today we have a special episode. Hello, listeners, and hello, watchers. Welcome to another episode of the SDR DiscoCall podcast / vidcast. And I'm looking forward to today's show as we've got another great guest, somebody that I connected with on LinkedIn, had a discussion and got him here. But for all you listeners out there and for our watchers, please make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss future episodes. And if you can and do us a favor, please give us your rating on your local podcast platform. So coming back to our guest, this is somebody that I connected with earlier on LinkedIn during the world of remote selling and the pandemic that was going on. And this guest reached out to me and said, Neil, I like your show. I'd like to be a guest, but I don't know if it's for me. And the main reasons was because they weren't fundamentally the word SDR in their title. And if anything, they were actually quite up higher. And again, the question was, am I too old for this? And the 2 points is, if you're in the world of sales or business development, you're on board. And regardless of age, we don't discriminate. We want everybody on this show regardless. So I said, yes, I want to get you on. So I'd love to introduce Stephen Sydenham. Stephen, how are you doing today? And welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Neil. Thank you. It's good to be on. Very good. Very good.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining today, sir. So, Stephen, for the listeners and the watchers for this show, could you please introduce, who are you, where are you based in the world, what do you do, and kind of what do you do at the company that you're at?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Stephen Sydenham, as said. So who am I? As Neil has already said, I'm getting quite old now, so I'm 41 years old, and currently I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of a Polish software house called Kodeka. So I'm based in Kraków, in the south of Poland. It's a beautiful city. If you haven't visited, I suggest you go.
100%.
And in terms of what I do, I'm the Chief Commercial Officer there. And I I drive everything that is to do with the commercials. So the marketing, the sales, the branding, but primarily the revenue generation, I guess, is what you would say. In terms of Kodeka itself, as I said, Kodeka is a software house that kind of does everything that a software house can do. In terms of full cycle development, product design, audits, team on demand, team augmentation, that kind of thing.
Love it. So a man of many responsibilities and multiple hats, working in the world of software, based out in Kraków in Poland, which is somewhere I really, really want to go out to. You must be one hell of a busy man, Stephen.
Yeah, that's a bit of an understatement of the year, to be honest. Yeah.
I love it. And, outside of sales, what do you kind of get up to? What floats your boats? What's your hobbies and what's your interests there?
So, I mean, obviously, primarily, my main interest is my son. So, so I have a 6-year-old little boy, or 7-year-old, sorry. He's just turned 7. So, I've got a 7-year-old little boy. It takes up a lot of my time on weekends, etc. But he's also got into some of my hobbies. So I play a lot of golf, which he started to do himself. So watch this space. There might be a new Polish stroke English golf champion in the future. Yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah. Other than that, I'm also an I'm a theatre graduate, so I do some kind of Amdram stuff, but mainly I do music. So I've got I work with a few bands here in Krakow, and I've got my own band as well, so that keeps me busy. Yeah.
Ah, sweet. I absolutely love that. So we've got quite a few things in common. So again, I'm a dad. My son's 6. He's going to be 7 next week. His thing is dancing. And yes, he takes up a lot of my time on weekends as well. And maybe he might be the future dancer. Recently, he's actually said he's really into football because I think of like the England games that have been on recently as well. And yeah, like again, just in terms of music, I'm also a rapper and I jam with bands and stuff. So you never know, guys and girls, there could be a future jam session between.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds like a great idea. A nice collaboration. Online collaboration. I think that sounds like a great idea.
Indeed. So, so like kind of coming back to your story. So for the listeners that are listening through the podcast, as you're aware, this is also a video-based show. So don't forget to get onto our YouTube channel where you can see us sharing our screens and information about our guests. But Stephen, like looking at your LinkedIn profile, I absolutely love that profile. Look at that. Just, I love the beard. I love like the attire and everything like that. It's actually spot on. So, but kind of like going back in the days, like kind of like seeing like where you've come from. And I think this is one of the things that stood out to me. Like whenever I'm reviewing guests, I'm always looking for interesting journeys to kind of like to where they are today. So obviously like with being from the University of Plymouth, like doing a BA in drama and dramatics and theatre arts. So now I get that. You've been a sales manager within the hospitality industry, like the famous Wetherspoons, and like the hotel industry as well. You've been a key account manager at Freshmail. You've been a PR and project manager. You've been a sales project manager. You've been a sales director. You've been a team lead as well within the hospitality sector. And then obviously you was the head of business development back in Jan 21 for Kadeka, and you've worked your way up to be the CCO over the last 6 months. So that's a lot of experience, and there's a lot of interesting stories there. But Stephen, like, could you kind of start from the beginning, like in your own words, like how did things kick off and how did you get to where you are today, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be honest, that doesn't really cover half of it.
Fill us in.
So yeah, I mean, actually, when you and I first met, Neil, I did tell you a little story that actually I tell most people actually, but yeah, I mean, kind of sales has always been in my blood. So I remember as far back as when I was 6 years old. My father was heavily involved in Formula One, in motor racing, and he had a business called Racing for Britain where he sponsored British drivers, namely Johnny Herbert, Martin Brundle, the two big ones, to kind of get them a seat into Formula One.
Cool.
And so I spent most of my childhood going along to race meetings with him. And part of his business, so it was like a membership-based business, basically. So people would join as a member of Racing for Britain, and part of that money would then go to the drivers, for sponsoring the drivers. So even at 6 years old, I was stood there, stopping people as they were walking past and talking to them about Racing for Britain and trying to get them to join as members and selling the merchandise that my dad had, like the T-shirts and the badges and things like that. So yeah, I mean, I kind of watched my dad do it. I was constantly watching my dad talking to new people and networking and selling, and he had a few businesses through his lifetime, and it was always the same thing. I mean, he was always kind of bringing in new clients and et cetera, et cetera. So I had a very good mentor in that sense from a very early age. And then obviously with doing drama and theatre and things like that, it kind of it seems like it's like a natural kind of thing for me to do, really. So yeah, I mean, as you said, I started off, I was an out of work actor. I was working in bars and restaurants and things like that. I was in London for a while, and I was actually working for Mitchells and Butler, which was then 7 continents, I think, something like that. And I suddenly found myself in a position where I was running a pub in central London, in Bank in central London at the age
Must
of
have
19.
Been busy.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I mean, I was 19 years old, and the manager, who was an Australian guy, just turned around to me one day and said, I'm going back to Australia, and you're taking over. And I kind of went, right, okay.
If we pause there for a minute, because there are 2 interesting aspects here as well. So well, a few actually. So like having that father figure and that role model to kind of learn about the world of sales, like, you know, sponsorships, like trying to get people into the membership side.
Yeah.
And at 6 years old to be influenced by that is absolutely beautiful. And I love it. And we've had quite a few guests where their family members had worked in sales, and it's kind of something they wanted to aspire to, but they never knew kind of how they were going to do it later in life. Another thing that I've seen with a few guests, a lot of us have come from a performance background. So we've had people that have done theatre and drama, or, you know, perhaps music. And I think the reason that's interesting for me is whenever I'm hiring for like future SDRs and I come across somebody that has like a performance and arts background, that really, like, I'm really curious to see like what their presence is. And the reason I say that is I've always kind of thought sales is a performance, right? Because you've got an audience, which is, because you've got your audience, which are your prospects. Perhaps you're doing a presentation or a demo. You're trying to give them the wow factor, and, you know, you want to add in elements of humor to that as well. Because I think people buy from people and people connect with people versus, you know, robotic scripts and things that just don't sound natural and flow.
Absolutely.
But then, like you said, coming into central London at bank at the age of 19, you're working within this hospitality, like pub sector, and this manager says to you, right, at age 19, you're going to take over. Like, what was going through your mind, and like, what happened, Stephen?
I mean, to be honest, I mean, it's a very good question. What was going through my mind? Panic was one. That was the initial reaction, was panic. But I mean, to be honest, I mean, he was pretty good. I mean, you know, I did panic, and I did kind of say to him, you know, Christ, you know, I can't do that. You know, I have no idea what I'm doing. And he actually, you know, he was the one that said to me, you know, believe in yourself. You know, I mean, you know what you're doing. You've been working with me. You've been doing it all already. Nothing's going to change. You know, you just keep doing what you're doing. And so, you know, so I did. I mean, that place was turning over about 36k a week.
With all
so
those
we had
bankers.
we had all the bankers, and their headquarters BT was just up the road, so they all came in for their lunch and things like that.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, it was daunting, to say the least, but I've never been one to kind of shy away from you know, from a challenge, or you know, to kind of be scared by anything. Or, well, I mean, I have, but I mean, one of the things actually, and as I'm going to inject this now because it seems like a good time to do it. But there's one of the books that really kind of changed things for me that I read within life and also within sales, to be honest, especially within sales, was and I've actually got it here, which is because I'm encouraging my wife to read it. But I'm actually rereading it now, and I actually read it then at that time when I was 19, because somebody suggested it to me, and it's this book here, and it's a little plug.
So
but
feel
it
the
says,
fear and do it anyway, Susan Jeffers. I love that.
Yeah.
So for the watchers out there, if you've seen that, we'll also put the link to that book so that people can get a copy of that and check it out. But yeah, give us like, what's the spiel on the book like? What
so I mean, basically, it's kind of a some people might say it's a self-help book, but it's not really. It's essentially just kind of looking at as it said, kind of feeling the fear, and then you know, kind of looking past that and kind of accepting the fear, and then using that fear to kind of drive you forward. And you know, for me, it 100% relates to sales. You know, because like at every stage of it, you know, whether it is the initial phone call, you know, the cold call, everybody, you know, especially when you first start sales, you fear that cold call more than anything else, because it's that, you know, it's not the call, it's not the actual talking to somebody, it's the rejection. Everybody hates rejection. You know, there's no way of there's no other way around it. Everybody hates being rejected. But obviously, as a salesperson, you know, whether you're an SDR or any other type of salesperson, you know, you have to deal with rejection.
Yeah.
And that's it. Rejection is 90% of your life, basically, when you're in sales. So yeah, I mean, it also kind of reflected back to stuff that I did on stage as well, because I suffered from stage fright quite a lot.
Yep.
So I had to kind of overcome that, obviously, otherwise I was not going to be very good in theatre.
Yeah.
So I kind of, I dealt with it. I kind of faced my fear, and just did it anyway, basically, and just got on with it.
Absolutely love that. And I think that's like, so there's again some really interesting topics here as well. So like going back to, your manager kind of saying to you, like, you can do this, like you've been doing it for a while, nothing's really going to change. And I think with SDRs, sometimes when they're new to a role, or they're new to like being into sales and, like you say, calling people, emailing people and facing that rejection, a lot of the times as like a coach or a manager, it's your role to get them out of their comfort zone and provide them, responsibilities which can like, level them up as well.
Yeah.
And I found this with like students as well, like or been a manager and said, right, you're going to be doing this type of SDR work. You're going to be more strategic on your accounts. You're going to be doing more calling. You're going to be sending out more videos. And they're like, I'm not sure. Like, I don't really know if I want to do that. And I think that's human, right? It's just natural.
Yeah.
To be fearful of things that you don't know how it's going to pan out. But I think to your point, like just like taking it by the horns and facing that fear and running with it is, it's a sign of strength, and it's something that we should always be doing. Like to get us, I'm constantly pushing out of my comfort zone on a regular basis, because that's how I know that I'm going to grow, right?
Yeah.
And with that book, so again, for the listeners and watchers, we'll definitely put a link into that as well. But I love that where you said like you're facing your fears. And I think in the mindset of fears, it's not so much the action at hand or the task, it's more so just doing it. That's the initial fear. Yeah. And what I found is, like, again, when I used to cold call, or when I used to like try a new way of prospecting, I was like, I have no idea how this is going to pan out, and I'm actually cacking my pants and this could completely go wrong. You're right, it could. But the other side of it is it could go completely fine, and it could be, just totally okay. And I think what I try to, and for our guests and listeners, like for SDRs, is to Stephen's point, when you face that fear, 9 times out of 10, once you've done the action and it's been done, you may think to yourself, do you know what, it wasn't that bad, or it wasn't as bad as I thought. And you think, do you know what, I can go do it again. So it's initially facing that fear by grabbing the bull by the horns, getting it done, and then just reflecting back on it and thinking, was it that scary? Should I have been that worried? Like you always got to try something new. But again, thank you, Stephen, for that reminder. So
that's right.
So like you've got the book, like this manager is kind of giving this responsibility to like run this pub. Like what happened after that, Stephen?
Yeah, so basically, so I did that for a number of months, and happy to say that I did that successfully. And then essentially what happened was my area manager then came to me. And said to me, look, we've got another pub that is not doing very well. You've done extremely well with kind of running this pub and marketing it and bringing in new clients, etc. So we would like you to go to the other pub. Yep. And see what you can do with it, basically. So the idea was to work closely with the area manager and to kind of go into this pub and see what could be done and turn it back into a profitable business. So that's what I did, and I kind of I just went in with an open mind and I looked at where it was going wrong, the failings, what could be improved, what couldn't, and I turned that business around, turned that back into a profitable pub. Yep. Which then led me to another one, which then led me to another one, and another one, and another one, and another one, and so I did that then for quite a while, actually, for that company. And then I started to then do that independently. Yep. So I was working for a number of different brands, and I would just simply go into businesses, whether they were bars or restaurants or hotels, and basically just do the same thing, just assess what was happening within that establishment at the time. so that I could. And a lot of the time, what I actually did was I went in for 2 weeks. It was kind of what do you call it, like a secret customer kind of thing.
Okay, yeah, like a mystery shopper.
Yeah, mystery shopper. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. So it was a bit like that kind of approach. So essentially, what I did was I took 2 weeks where I would go in as a customer, or I would sit at the bar and I would watch and listen, and I would listen to the staff, and I would, and I would go and eat at the restaurant or stay in the hotel, and I would, do these different things, and that would give me, the best overview really of the kind of the point of view from a client. And obviously, that's the most important point of view when it comes to selling anything, is the client, because if the client's not happy, then they're not going to buy. It's as simple as that. And so I just kept on using that kind of thinking, that that methodology.
Yeah.
And it worked basically. So that was kind of how I did it. So yeah, but I mean, in between that, obviously, I did. Before I kind of got into hospitality, my very first job was a sales job. So I worked in Currys. That's going back a few years.
Yeah. So like the digital, like peripherals, like equipment, laptops, etc.
Yeah.
So VCRs,
VCRs and washing machines, and all of that kind of thing. So I worked for them. That was my very first job. So as I say, sales is something I've always done. So it's and then I kind of I think the worst sales job that I ever had it was when I was living in Bristol, and that was just after I was in London.
Yeah.
And I went to work for a sales company,
okay.
Which was basically, we went round door to door selling charity.
Okay.
So we got people to sign up and on a direct debit, to like £5 or £10 a month to this charity. And it was kind of an insight into a whole new, different type of sales. It was very Americanized. It was very kind of like at the end of the day, we would all come home, and there would be a triangle, a bell, and a gong, and we'd all have to stand around in a circle, and depending on how many sales you made that day, you'd go in and do the triangle, the bell, or the gong, and then go around and high five everybody. And perhaps it works for some people, but for me, it just didn't sit right with me at all. And I kind of thought, no, I'm just not doing this anymore. But the one thing that I did get from working there, the best kind of learning curve from there, was rejection that we were talking about earlier. It was as simple as knock on 100 doors, 10 of them are going to possibly sign up, basically. So 90% of those people are either going to just say no politely, or they're going to say no very unpolitely, and slam doors in your face, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So walking around the cold streets of Bristol. In the middle of winter, with getting doors slammed in your face all day, it's it was a massive learning curve, to say the least. But like I say, it did. It kind of built character in the sense of dealing with that rejection, and kind of just carrying on regardless. So
definitely. And there, like with that the story. So thank you so much for sharing those. Those are some great stories around. There's some definite bits that I want to pick apart. And I know we're going a little bit back here, but like within that establishment of fixing up that pub that you was working with. And it was beautiful that your area manager recognized that talent and just said, hey, Stephen, you know what? You've done well here. We've got another pub that we want to put you in. And then being able to, replicate that and, fix what was wrong and get them up and running. And then, like you said, you went on to the other one. And I can relate to that because as like an SDR coach with happy selling, that's kind of what I do. Like I work with an SDR or business development team, which may not be working or performing to their best. I go in with things that I've learned in my previous pub or my previous SDR team, and I go in and kind of see what's going on in the world, and then try and help them, and then improve. And then I always have this ethos of I want to leave it in a better position than I found it. Right.
Yeah.
Like I may be there for 6 months, I may be there for 12 months. I won't be there forever because I want to try and work in as many pubs as I can because that's where I'm going to learn, right? But I also like that stance of, kind of analyzing what's working and what's not working and then bringing about that change. But some SDR or sales managers that might be watching this show is how do you deal with like an establishment or a team that have perhaps worked an old way, and then you've got to kind of get them into the thinking of working in a new way in order to be successful. How did you kind of handle those situations, Stephen?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I mean, that's a very, very good question. I mean, I think the idea of change within anything, whether it's a team or whether it's an entire establishment or a corporate company or anything at all.
Yeah.
People generally don't like change, and so dealing with that kind of change management almost kind of role of what you do is one of the hardest things, really. I mean, because you come up against resistance constantly.
Yeah.
People generally kind of get very set in their ways. But I mean, I think one of the most, one of the kind of the key important things that I learned about sales, I think, was the idea of a growth mindset. So it's essential for any salesperson to have a growth mindset. Now, what a growth, for anybody out there that's thinking, what is a growth mindset?
Yes.
So you have kind of typically you have kind of two different types of mindset. You have a fixed mindset, you have a growth mindset. So a fixed mindset is that person that resists change, that doesn't want to do anything new. They feel like what they do works, and so therefore why would you change it, etc., etc. But I think in order to really be successful within sales, especially if you want to kind of grow your career and kind of step up the ladder and become a team leader or a manager or a director or anything along those lines, you need to constantly be changing. You need to constantly be looking at new trends, looking at how things work, and adapting to clients' needs, adapting your kind of your work ethics, everything about it. Basically, you have to remain kind of open-minded at all times, and never be settled. Basically, never be settled in the way that you work. Like I think I think anybody that kind of feels like I mean, like for instance, like I said at the beginning, I'm 41 years old. I've been working in sales now for, officially for kind of 20 odd years, unofficially for much longer than that. If I go back as far as my father and my childhood, but I would never be I would never say that I know everything about sales. And I think anybody that tells me that they know everything that there is to know about sales is either not very good at their job, or is failing and just doesn't want to admit it. It's just essential. I mean, you have to do that. But I mean, I kind of sidelined a little bit there, but coming back a bit more directly to your question. In terms of dealing with it, I mean, I think, to be honest, as a manager, I think you have to accept that not everybody works in the same way as you. Not everybody is the same. People are very different. You have to have a different approach depending on who you're talking to. and whether or not it is kind of hard management in terms of, you've got somebody that has the ability, that can do the work, but is just kind of being lazy about it, perhaps. You have to be perhaps a little bit harder on them. But I mean, most of the time it just comes down to kind of a lack of belief in themselves, so really it's listening is the key thing, really. And I mean, and it's the same for sales. I mean, it's when you're doing sales, preferably you should be listening for at least 70% of the time. And it's the same with management. I mean, if you're constantly telling people how to do something and not listening, then it means that you're not a very good manager. So you just listen to what's going on around you, listen to the people. The best insights that you can get are from the team that are working together. They're the ones that will tell you, well, actually, this isn't quite working for us, or this process doesn't quite work for us, or we need something extra, and if you listen to that and you kind of take note, that'll tell you everything that you need to know in order to make that change. And then like I say, then it's just about kind of doing what you can and kind of offering encouragement and offering guidance, etc., to make sure that
it's live TV. Don't worry about it.
It is live TV. Yeah, thunder and lightning. It's just gone. It's just thunder and lightning has just appeared outside my window. But yeah, I mean, like I say, so it's just listening is the key, really, and then just offering encouragement and offering guidance and support to kind of instigate that change.
Definitely. And I think so that is some lightning and solid advice, Stephen. I really appreciate that, sir. And I think, you're right, because I think one of the key learnings that I had, like as a manager or as an SDR training other SDRs when I was still in the role, was I had to realize that not everybody else is like me. Not everybody's going to do it Neil's way. And we all have our own ways of doing stuff. So from a management perspective, being open to their ideas and how they think they can achieve those goals. And also, as you said, the fixed mindset versus growth mindset. I'm always happy to hear other people's ways of doing stuff. But what I equally ask back in return is be open with trying out new things. Because again, if I know everything and I know how to do this role, then, well, how the hell am I going to grow? How do I get out of doing what I do and getting more? And it's that saying of, in order to get the things that you don't have, you have to do the things that you don't normally do, right? And equally, like you said, it's there's a high element of listening and feedback between the teams. And that's why I've had this time and time again where I go into a company and I'm helping it, like I'm doing it right now with a bunch of SDRs and my talented team, where there wasn't as much of a cold calling culture, right? And my question kind of to them was like, why don't we call? And they were just like, we're happy just doing emails, and that's kind of what's brought us the success like to date. And I'm like, okay, I've been kind of brought in to help you guys take it to the next level. So again, like, why aren't we doing the calls? And sitting down with the team members one-to-one, it just came down to the confidence element of it. And it was that they hadn't really had training per se of how to do a cold call successfully. So like what I did with the team is I gave them individual time where I just sat with them. We did the role plays, we gave the framework, and now weeks have gone on, calls have gone up, and they're more confident in doing that. And then it's the next step of, right, so typically within some SaaS companies, as an SDR, if you do outbound, I speak to you, Stephen, I've sent you an email, you're quite interested. The hope would be that I could then say to you, Stephen, let's have a 15-minute chat where I can share more information about our customers being successful and seeing if our solution can also help you do the same. And in some companies, what I found is the SDR does the email, prospect is happy to connect, and then they just set up a call with the salesperson. And at that point, I'm like, well, where's the discovery? And like, how are you finding out if this person's a fit? And they're like, well, we don't do that. We just, put it over to the expert. And I'm like, but how are you going to be the expert if you just hand it over? And they're like, And again, it was that question of, okay, so why? And trying to dig deeper into this is because, again, there was no framework, there's no training, there's no support, there's no guidance, there's no coaching.
Yeah.
So giving that, and then again, the initial reaction from the team was like, well, we don't do that. And should we be doing that? And it's trying to change that mindset. But I always understand is that this takes time and it isn't overnight, and I can't just force it down their throats. I have to help them come to their own conclusions. In that. So solid advice for anybody that's like sales managers, if you're listening in. Stephen, you've got some solid points in. And if anybody like our guests, you may also be considering taking that leadership role from being an SDR or BDR and going into sales management, which again, I totally advocate and think is a great step, especially just before closing, if that's what you want to do. But you said another interesting piece, which really floated my boat within that hospitality side of it, where you were being like the mystery shopper. And you were like seeing the experience of what a customer felt, like coming through that process. And I think a lot of SaaS companies should do this more often, or sales companies in general. And for the SDRs, like every time I go into a new job, I pretend to be a lead and I do a demo request through their website, or I download a piece of content from, like their website as well. And I want to see what the process is like on follow-up. And sometimes I'll actually like try to pretend to be like a prospect to get that demo, so that when I come into the company and the VP of sales or the CRO says like, so Neil, what do you think we could change in our company? And I can say, well, I've actually pretended to be a lead and I found these things as well. So I think it's also important, if you're an SDR, BDR, before you apply for that job, go request a demo, see what it feels like to be, a customer.
Yeah.
And then that's some feedback that you can definitely take into the company as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great approach, to be honest. I think it's a great approach to anything. I mean, like you say, it doesn't matter kind of how you're coming into that organization or for what reason you're coming into that organization. I think to see it from a client's perspective or from a customer's perspective is I mean, there is nothing else that compares to that kind of experience and that kind of knowledge. So yeah, I mean, I think it is essential. I think it is essential for everybody, to be honest.
100%, sir. And kind of like coming back to like the cold streets of Bristol and door-to-door selling and trying to get people to pay up for this charity and sign up to it. That you painted an image in my head of like, coming in at the end of the day with the triangle and the gong and everybody round in applause. And I've been in that as well. Like in my first sales job, we had that, like even I remember at Zora, like we'd have an electronic gong, right? So every time somebody got an opportunity or booked a new meeting, was like gong. And it is fun to do that, but some people might find it a bit cheesy and stuff. But as you said, like in that role, you face a hell of a lot of rejection. And that is an understanding in our role. And we've had it on guests, like building that thick skin or, building up a bit of resilience. And I think the key takeaway there is trying to not take it personally, which isn't always easy. But again, it's that fear element of the rejection. But I think the best thing to do is to just get comfortable with rejection. I remember being a telesales rep and doing like hundreds of calls every day and just people telling me to go away, not interested. And what I used to do is I used to take that energy and think, oh, I love it when people tell me no, because it fires me up a little bit more to get onto the next call to see if I can go get that yes. But what are your tips, Stephen, like when facing rejection? Because again, like you said in sales, this is something we're going to face day in, day out, right? Like how do you deal with the rejection?
I mean, to be honest, I mean, I think, like you said, I mean, I think the one of the key points is don't take it personally, because it's not a personal thing. I mean, they're not rejecting you. They're not rejecting you as a person. It's just, I mean, to be honest, I mean, like one of my key points is that I've always stuck with the philosophy of no is never a no. Like a no doesn't exist. Like in the sense that if a prospect says no, it doesn't. Almost 100% of the time, it never actually means no. It either means you've not called me at the right time, or right now is not the right time, or I haven't had my coffee yet, or or actually I'm a little bit hungry because I haven't had my lunch yet. I mean, it could be 1,000 different reasons as to why that person that you're speaking to at that point has said no, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
And almost never is it, I mean, in fact, never is it got anything to do with you personally. It may have something to do with the product or the services that you're selling them. But if the conversation's only just started, then it doesn't have anything to do with that either, because they don't know anything about you, or they don't know anything about the product or the services. So it is just really just accepting the fact that none of those no's are personal, and none of those no's really mean no. They're just another way of you kind of handling that objection, and then asking them why are they saying no? What's the reason behind their no? And that's actually what you really want.
Yeah.
Like that information is what you really want, because that information is going to be the information that you need in order to sell them the product or to sell them the services, or because it's that's whatever you're selling, you won't be talking to them unless they potentially want to buy whatever it is that you're selling.
Yeah.
And so it's just about understanding. It's about understanding that client. It's about understanding that customer, and where their pain points are, and then kind of knowing your product well enough to be able to immediately identify what elements of your product or your services are going to help to solve those pain points and those problems. And that kind of brings me to a very important thing, I think, and that is I actually had not so long ago I was dealing with training, and I was training some salespeople. And one of them said to me, well, actually, I think I need some more time to really know the product, and my answer was, you don't. Yes, it's important to know your product, and yes, it's important to kind of know the different elements, etc., etc. But actually, I could talk to a prospect without knowing about the product at all.
Yeah.
And still get that phone call to a point where they're happy to book in a meeting or a demo, or to talk further about as like a discovery call.
Yeah.
To find out whether or not the services that we offer are going to be compatible with what they need. And you don't. What it is really is like I say, it's just again, it's coming back to listening. You just listen to that client, listen to them, ask them the right questions, and just understand that, again, a no is never a no. It's a no is actually a very short way of saying, actually there's things that you should be asking me, and there's information buried under there that you have to get to. So
yeah, I love it, and that's some sound advice, and I agree with you, sir. Like, as you said, like with the rejection, we are going to face it, and it's going to be just part of our sales career, and getting comfortable with it is very key. And to be getting comfortable with it early on is also something that's going to help you later down the line as well. So by facing those rejections day in, day out, that's what will help build up that resilience. That's what will help build up that hard skin. And again, to your key point is that don't take it personally, because again, when you ring this person or you cold call them, you don't know what's happened before that call, what's going through their life, what's happened in their day, what things that have got going on in their life. And the idea is, whenever I was cold calling, I just went in with a mindset of not trying to book a meeting, but just trying to help the other person on the other end of the line. If it was something that was going to help them in their job with a case study or a link or a blog or something to help them out doing what they're doing without them having to sign a sales order, because that's more memorable on a phone of somebody trying to help you versus trying to somebody, sell to you as well. And I think to your, like your colleague's point as well, I face that as well, where, Neil, I'm scared to do the discovery call. I'm scared to do the cold call because I don't know the product that well and I'm still a newbie. And I'm like, I'm even saying that to my current team right now. I said, I've only been in the company a month and a half, and I don't know all the ins and outs of our platform and product, and I don't have to be a product expert. But if I can at least do one thing, which is learn a customer story or a customer case study of why a customer came to us, kind of what were the challenges they were facing, what was that persona's life like, and kind of like what did they achieve working through that, I said that's more impactful than being a product expert. Because I think my times at Showpad, we used to have a saying which was 80% of salespeople are product experts and 20% are industry experts, or, you know, the ones that have the insights as what's going on in the world. And it's those 20% of those industry experts that are the 80% that bring in 80% of the revenue. So people don't just want the person that knows how all the bells and whistles work. They want to know what other people in other companies and industries are going through, because that's gold and valuable information to help out your prospect with their strategies as well. And obviously, like we've learned a hell of a lot in this show today, but I also wanted to find out, like, what was the story with Codeca, like being the head of biz dev and becoming like the CCO. Like, what was that journey like, and how did you come across those guys?
I mean, actually, it was a very cool journey. Actually, I've got to say, again, it was really kind of somebody just putting their faith in me, to be honest. So I mean, I was previously working for an online OTA, and I was doing sales within the OTA industry, and I left the company, and actually I put an open to work post on LinkedIn. And I think within about 60 seconds of posting it, I got a message from Martin Obel, who was the CEO of Codeca. Yeah. He contacted me and said, "Hey Steve, you know, I've looked over your LinkedIn profile. I need help. Like, I need help with sales. Yeah. Have you got time to have a chat? You know." So I spoke with him, and he'd actually been, you know, he's a developer. He's a senior developer, and he'd actually been trying to teach himself sales, possibly at the worst time of his life, because he was trying to do it during the pandemic. Yeah. So I mean, trying to teach yourself sales during a pandemic, not an easy task. Trying to teach yourself sales full stop is not an easy task. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, so I had that conversation with him. And so he brought me on board, and initially I started as kind of with business development, the head of business development, and it was kind of how it worked, really. I mean, it was the initial conversation was, you know, can you kind of just come in and help? Yeah. So I kind of went in initially with the understanding that I might go in for a month or a couple of months. Yeah. And you know, put some processes in place for him, and maybe, you know, give him some tutoring and guidance, and then, you know, within kind of about a month and a half of being there, he then, you know, said to me, "Look, you know, I can see what you've done already, and I can see, you know, kind of where you're going." And obviously, you know, I'd kind of laid out a roadmap for him for the next kind of 12 to 5 years. 12 months to 5 years. Yeah. So then he said, "Look, you know, is there any chance that you want to stay with the company, basically?" Nice. I was a bit wary, because I was looking for the right opportunity, you know, because I am of a certain age now, you know, and I've got my family to think about. You know, I've got a little boy. Yeah. So I was kind of looking for something more permanent, more kind of, you know, maybe established, rather than you know, kind of a partially established startup, which is what Codeca kind of is, in a sense. Yeah. But then, you know, having a conversation with him, I just it felt right, you know, and so I just thought, you know, sod it.
Go for it.
You don't win anything unless you do it. And it kind of comes back to, you know, facing or feeling the fear and doing it anyway. You know, the fear was not having a permanent contract, working for a startup, etc., and I just thought, you know, you've just got to go for it. So I did, And he offered me the chance of coming into the company at kind of a CXO level or C level kind of position, and I oversee the marketing and the sales and the branding and actually I thought, well, hang on a minute, that's actually exactly what I left my previous company for, because I wanted to find a role like that. Because I enjoy the kind of the multifaceted kind of role where I can kind of look at different aspects and look at the bigger picture as a whole and kind of drive things like that. And that's what he offered. So I just thought, let's do it, and so here I am, I mean, since starting, we've changed everything. We've rebranded the company. We've got a new website that's in development at the moment that will be launched in the next couple of weeks, actually.
Nice.
And I've just recently brought in the first of my team, which is the new head of business development for Codeka. I mean, it's like I say, I mean, it was everything that I wanted. It was everything that I was kind of looking for. I'm very glad now that I kind of took that chance and kind of kept that kind of open mind, or that growth mindset.
I love it.
And so that's how I find myself here today.
Wicked. That is a super cool story. As you was telling that, I was thinking back to that 19-year-old Stephen when that area manager came back and said, you know what, you're doing a really good job. I love what you're doing with the place. I'd love you to do it in another place. And similar to yourself, like the founder of Codeka, like kind of asked you for help. You came in, like you didn't know how long this was going to run. You implemented a few processes. You're helping them build out. You're giving that roadmap as to how to grow this over the coming years. And he was just like, I like what you're doing. Like, we'd like you to stay a bit longer and like do some more of this, and like getting yourself in. And that fear of joining a startup, going into a role which is unknown, how this is going to be. Is this going to be a permanent contract? I face that fear every couple of months with every client that I have. So I've lived that, and I've gone through that. Most recently, it happened with my current client, Happy, where I'm an SDR manager, where they approached me and said, like, we're looking for a BDR manager. And I'm like, I don't really do that anymore because I'm trying to focus more on training and coaching. Mm-hmm. And they're like, just meet with the founder, like meet with the VP of sales, like meet these guys and girls. So I met the heads of marketing, sales, the SDR team themselves, like shout out to my team. And the more I spoke with them, the more I fell in love with it. And kind of what I'm doing right now is like implementing processes. We're trying to improve stuff. And there is that fear of, I don't know how long this is going to last, but like having that contract in place where we said, all right, for a set period, this is at least what we're going to go for, and let's see what we come up with. Yeah, I can totally relate to that, dude. But yeah, I think you've given some solid advice. And again, to like the listeners and watchers out there, like a lot of us may come into this role in sales development or biz dev to, become an account executive or, go into a different department. But there are ways that you can climb up within a company to your position, Stephen. We had that with Will Koning, who was an SDR for his business. Now he's a CEO. Well, actually, he's hired his first CEO and CFO and the rest of the senior team, but he started this little thing from the beginning. Nice. And we can do that. We can aspire. That's what, when I joined as an SDR, the question put to me by my VP of operations, like, why'd you join this startup? And I was like, because I want to be a CEO of my own company one day, and I want to learn how other people do it. And it took me quite a few years, but I got there. Yeah. There is all that way. But lots of gold in today's show, Stephen, and I'm really happy that we had you on board. And again, like before you joined the show, there was that fear of, could you be a good guest? Like, is it going to be relevant? And we faced that fear, and here we are today. So I think 100% it has been worth it. So thank you. And a question that I love to put to guests is, what 3 bits of advice would you give to a younger version of yourself about to embark on this journey? Or the option is yours. What advice would you give to a future version of yourself, Stephen?
Okay. I mean, I think that first and foremost, I think the best piece of advice that I can possibly give is just believe in yourself 100%. Mm-hmm. And don't let anybody, tell you that you're wrong or that your thinking is wrong, and especially that. I mean, it's at the end of the day, a job is a job, and there are a lot of jobs out there. I've moved around a lot in my career. I've from different companies, etc., to working for myself, and but the one thing, like I say, the most important piece of advice that I could possibly give anybody is just to believe in yourself, to believe in the way that you think, to believe in how you do things, to believe in your confidence, to just go out there and just get it done. Basically, whatever it is that you need to do, just go out there and just get it done, and just put all of that belief 100% in yourself, in your abilities, and you will get there regardless. You might come up against all sorts of problems and bumps along the road, but eventually you will get there. And then others. I mean, I think definitely kind of harking back to what we were talking about before is understanding that a no is never a no. And so a lot of sales managers that I've worked with in the past, they would say, how many deals have you lost this week? And my answer was always none. Regardless, because even if I'd had 12 people that said to me, no, thanks, I'm not interested, I haven't lost that. That's as far as I'm concerned, that's not a loss. That just means that the time wasn't right. And I would leave it and then go back to them, and a lot of the time convert them into sales. So that would definitely be another one. It's just no is never a no, or a sale is never lost, perhaps. And then third one is difficult, I think, actually. I think always remain open-minded and always educate yourself. Find books like the one that we talked about earlier. Another book that I really enjoyed that changed things for me was Selling the Invisible. That was another good one. Okay. It's a book called Selling the Invisible by Harry Beckwith. So you can put a link for that one up there as well.
I'll definitely put a link down for that one.
I might contact these people actually and ask for royalties, but yeah, just educate yourself in as many different ways as you can. I mean, even if you're happy with just remaining in a sales team and that's what you want to do because you've got outside interests and things like that, and you're not interested in leading teams, etc. Still educate yourself, because unless if you're not learning, then you're stuck. And nobody wants to be stuck, because if you get stuck, you get bored, and if you get bored, then you're dead. Unhappy, basically.
You're not a happy seller.
Exactly. Yeah. And as a seller, you have to be a happy seller. I mean, it harks back to the classic of smile down the phone. And
smile and dial.
Yeah, absolutely, and it is true. I mean, people. People will pick up on your tone of your voice, etc., very, very quickly. So yeah, I think those three: believe in yourself, a deal is never a no. And just keep educating yourself.
I did promise smiles on this show, Stephen. Absolutely amazing. Love it. And are there any shout outs that you'd like to give out on today's show, Stephen?
I mean, for sure, I'll give a shout out to Martin Ogle, the Cadeca the Cadeca CEO. Huge shout out to him, to all of my team at Cadeca, because they are awesome. To anybody and everybody that I've ever come across in my career, that has shown faith, given guidance, and given me the room to kind of grow myself and develop. That's it.
Straight from the heart, Stephen. Absolutely love that. And shout out to Stephen and all your team as well. Stephen, it's been an absolute privilege to get you on the show. And as a question I put to guests, like if any of our listeners or watchers want to contact you like through LinkedIn to like pick your brain on any topics, or get those book links, or perhaps these publishers giving you your royalties, would it be all right for them to contact you on LinkedIn, sir?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, like I say, educating yourself is always key, and I am always more than happy to help anybody. Whether it's just answering a question, whether it's actually offering some kind of mentoring or something, anything at all. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Stephen Sydenham. You can find me on LinkedIn, and reach out. Just tell me what it is, and we'll find a way to figure it out. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, sir. So I also want to say a big thank you to the listeners and watchers of this show. So remember, if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, please make sure that you subscribe. If you're listening through it in your local podcast platform, please give us a rating, and feel free to share this message out with your future or your existing sales development or BDRs out there, because what we're trying to do is level up the world of sales development by sharing all these best practices from people like Stephen. But Stephen, again, thank you so much for being a great guest. I wish you a great week and happy selling, sir.
Thank you very much, Neil. Thanks for having me on the show. And massive shout out to all of your followers and all of your listeners. And massive thank you to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for listening to our show today. If you work in tech sales and have a career or story that you'd love to share, then please email us at podcast@happyselling.io and we'll be in contact to book in a show.